Welcome everybody to Sahoja, and thank you for helping to spread kindness. My name is Rajesh and I am one of the co-founders of Sahoja. And today I'm introducing to you Crystal Earle, who is the founder of
Brave Souls.
I got it. Who is the founder of Brave Souls.
Yay, you got it.
Yes, and she's not just the founder, but she describes herself as the chief optimist of Brave Souls. And that was what I was trying to remember. The chief optimist of Brave Souls. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. And tell us something about your product.
Well, I could actually show you something right now if you want to actually see. I don't know if this is people can see this on the video, but this is actually what the sole of a pair of women's shoes, anyways, from the sole actually looks like. So we use dyes for the sizing, but this is actually a tire sole. So working with landfill workers is truly how I got started. Because you work in a landfill and you can see, well, you imagine what you can see, but you start to realize that people that the things in the landfill, so much of it, the largest percentage of it reaches its end of life, but it has not reached its end of use. And so there's a lot of exciting things going on around the world in terms of how we're learning to recirculate and reuse and repurpose things. But I got the idea for the tire soles actually because I was living in Dominican Republic and I walked out of my apartment one day. It was January 2017, and my neighbor walked out at the same time, and she was across the courtyard from me. And I did the girl thing where I'm like, "Oh, I love your shoes. You got new shoes." And I walk over and we're standing there talking. She's just come back from Cuba. And she takes off a sandal and she's like, "Look at this." And it's like this beautiful handcrafted sandal. And I flip it over and the bottom was just like a silica plasticky sole. But when I saw that sole, that was like a lightning bolt on the side of the head for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I not think of this? Because I had just been having conversations with people out at the garbage dump. For example, I would be hosting like labor rights groups and things like that. And we'd be out there and people would ask me like, what's with all these tires? And I would be like, well, I don't know, but someone should really do something about these tires. And then I got the idea. And so I knew that there's a gentleman that worked with leather and products like that and had a workshop in one of the villages where I had been working with Live Different, the charity that I had started. And so I went on this mission to find him in this village, and I brought him this picture of a sandal that I had in my mind. And I said, he goes, "Oh yeah, no problem. I can make you that." I said, "Yeah, but I want a tire sole." And he looked at me so funny because I think he thought that I was like, let's just roll out a tire and start like sewing them on, shoes on top. And he's like, "Okay, well, leave it with me." And 3 days later, he sent me a WhatsApp photo, which is still how a lot of our business gets done in Dominican Republic, is on WhatsApp. He sends me a WhatsApp picture and he's like, "I found a guy." And it was a picture of a very simple leather flip-flop with this tire sole. So there's a lot of modifications and we had to do a lot of things. But the gentleman that we found happened to just live what would be the equivalent of a couple blocks away from him. And he was a Haitian gentleman. And Dominican Republic, there's hundreds of thousands of Haitian people that live in Dominican Republic. They're the same island. Yeah. And this gentleman he grew up in Port-au-Prince, and he was the third generation in his family who knew how to make sandals from tires.
Oh, wow.
And necessity is the mother of invention. And so his name is Bernard. And so that got us on this whole adventure of finding things. And I knew when I started Brave Souls that I've always been a fashion lover. So I knew that it wasn't like, I wasn't just looking to make some like simple, like, we want to have purpose and function, but I really wanted it to be something that people would look at it and be like, whoa, that's a beautiful pair of shoes. And it has a tire sole. Amazing, right? So that's what led us on this journey. And then everything just began to take on a life of its own, as it often does when an idea visits you and you decide that you're going to dance with this idea. And so we started using reclaimed leather and working with different elements like that.
So there's a lot there that you've
sorry.
Now let's just roll back slightly. Firstly, so what were you doing in the Dominican Republic?
So I had been traveling to Dominican Republic working with the charity that I started, Live Different, and brought thousands of people actually there. And we had worked with communities and built homes and schools and some different rescue centers and
What was
things
the
like that.
charity?
Pardon me? What charity? Oh,
What
the
was,
charity is called Live Different. So you
right.
can find it at livedifferent.com. And it was through that I was introduced to the garbage dump. And it was
Okay.
in the garbage dump that I met a woman, and her name was Mary Therese, and got to know her a little bit. And this was going back and forth. And I'd come back to Canada. This was around 2008. And when I got back to Canada, I found out that she had passed away, and that she had had a daughter that was now basically essentially left orphaned. And so it sparked this journey for me to start to find this little girl again, and started an adoption process in 2009. But because my daughter, because her birth mother had no papers, she was stateless, as is millions of people around the world. She had no papers. My daughter was without papers as well. And so that started this 10-year long journey of trying to get her the papers to be able to bring her to Canada. So in the middle of that, I got to rebuild my life. And
My gosh.
so then I ended up just being able to try to be there with her. So
So you started this journey with your charity, and then of course that leads you to all these opportunities with the Dominican Republic, and also helping you with your family.
yeah. And it's so fascinating, because in life, the thing that you think is the worst possible scenario is often the thing that catapults you to the next, to the thing that you never dreamed was possible, beyond what you could have dreamed of.
No, I mean, it gave rise to many opportunities, and one opportunity is meeting this person from the Dominican Republic who knew how to make soles out of tires. Why is that? Is there a reason why this is a third generation a skill that he possessed?
Well, I think it is in respect to the fact that in the world that you and I are in, we can often be quite far removed from necessity is the mother of invention in so many ways, right?
Yeah.
So much of change happens when we come up against something and we realize, like, the constraints. Innovation happens within constraints. And so I think that that's what we saw happen in the early 20th century, with tires in particular, where people that lived in places where there were discarded tires started to see different potential in what was something that was discarded was actually a raw material to start to use something else. So that's where it all started. And so he just happened to be the third generation in his family, and he had come to Dominican Republic to escape, to try to build a better life, but he brought this skill with him. And so it was pretty cool and serendipitous how we found each other.
Yeah. So I mean, again, visiting your site up to about 5 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago, you'd upcycled 2,377 tires. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
When was your company Brave Souls founded?
We were founded I launched Brave Souls in June of 2017, with $250.
My God. So as a startup to where you've got now, which is 4 years, you've saved the planet at the moment from being taken over by 2,000. That's something significant, and you're just starting the process.
Yeah.
Well done, you. I mean, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, what is your ethical stance, and how would you describe your ethical stance? I know now that you are a carbon neutral company, so that's a starting point.
Yes, carbon neutral.
So what is your ethical stance?
So we're carbon neutral, and we are currently working on becoming B Corp, which is really exciting for us as well. We're working on that. But at the core, there's a few things. So we believe in using circular as much as possible. So circular means that, and in particular, upcycle. So meaning that the material that we're using is not altered, it's just given a different life. So that goes for the tires, it goes for much of the leather that we use, and it goes for the fabrics inside, as much as possible. But at the core of who we are, we believe that fair means fair. So people should obviously be paid fairly for what they're making, but and that people should pay a fair price. So we use very simple pricing models, and that people that that buy our products should also be treated fairly in return. And we believe that we provide value by helping people understand the power of their choices and helping them continue to make better choices. So everything from highlighting what other ways, other brands that are doing really cool things that we believe in as well. But just in terms of the fact that, sustainable and ethical has often been kind of become a dichotomy, or it's been kind of marginalized in terms of people have thought that in order to shop sustainable, it's going to cost me a lot of money.
Yeah.
Or in order to shop ethical, I'm going to kind of like, it's not going to be fashionable, I guess is a nice way to put it. And while that may have been the most obvious things in the past, that's not the case anymore for a lot of people that are doing things around the world, and we consider ourselves to be those people. So, the ability to shop sustainably should be also come around the factors of, like, if you're buying something, are you buying it to last? Can it be repaired? Are you connected to the story behind what you own? And do you know where your products came from? 120 years ago, you're in the UK, I'm in Toronto right now. We would have known around in the neighborhoods that we live in, we would have known the clothes that we were wearing. We would have known who made our shoes. And if our shoes needed repair, we would have known where to take them. We would have been connected to the story behind what we owned. And we've become very separated from that globally. And this is an opportunity. We're now at the way, it's almost like the way forward is actually to look back at what worked in the past. And so we're now sitting here with a new opportunity as a global community, and in particular as a community of people who want to do better and want to find greater meaning and connection to what we own, to think about, like, what is the connection to what I own and why is it important? And when we treasure it, then it's going to take on a different significance in our life.
That's so beautiful, because you're right. I mean, I love the story behind the product. In fact, that's what's inspired these series of interviews. It's the stories behind it.
Yes.
The product becomes even that much more valuable, and you kind of forget the amount of sweat, time, what it takes to develop the product in the way that you want to develop it, especially if you have an ethical stance. And suddenly, when you hear the story behind the product, suddenly it just has a beautiful life of its own, and you want to treasure it, you want to value it. And you kind of keeps for a longer period of time as well, because you feel proud wearing it.
Exactly.
And you talk about fair price, knowing where it's coming from, but you also say you want it to be beautiful to look at as well. Yeah. So you can do it all. You've said you've talked about you founding an international youth charity, and of course the amazing work that you were doing in the Dominican Republic. Tell me, I mean, what motivated you to adopt an ethical stance in the first place for Brave Souls?
I think I had the advantage of in a couple things, living between two worlds. So recognizing my world rather than my world being shocked by seeing how other people live, it was actually a daily part of my life. And it was my family, essentially, like my daughter's grandmother, who I built a relationship with, is, so it took on a very personal relationship for me to think differently about everything. And then you just started to see, working with vulnerable people and allowing myself to build relationships. And I remember when I first started with the difference, started traveling, one of the most profound things was that I met a woman in Dominican Republic, and I sat down with her in her home, and she told me her story. And there's something very precious and holy about someone sharing their story with you. It's like it just, first of all, it's a human connection, but it actually takes things out of the realm of like being disconnected and just being a word or a concept. And it's like, no, this is actually a human, and this is their lived experience, and they're inviting me to share in their lived experience. And that just began to shape and change how I saw what was going on. And in a microcosm in the small world that I was living in Dominican Republic, I could make direct correlations to what I saw there going on globally. So it was a pretty easy next step then to think about, okay, so I could be a bridge between these two things, and I could help create, how big or small it is not as important as the idea that I need to just start, and I need to start to think differently about the power of my life in this situation. And once we get once we grab onto a strong sense of like, oh, actually, I have a strong sense of agency in this and my choices matter, then we begin to see things differently because we change the framework that we see everything else through. So I think that was probably the starting point for me.
I mean, it's one of the reasons that people feel so. I mean, I think if you ask me, if a lot of fear that's around the world, a lot of problems around the world, the core source is people feeling lonely now because they're all marginalized,
Yeah.
and we live separate lives. And when you start making people, make people realize that they are it's an inclusive process. They are a very important part through that process. They start feeling valued, and this is what community is all about in one sense.
Yeah.
It's making everybody. I mean, it's absolutely. You have a really really deep philosophy about your product. I mean, it is a philosophy. Your Brave Soul is not just a shoe. It's really is about the people who make that shoe and bringing their stories out.
Yeah, and it's about a partnership too, right? It's like not just telling a story just to be able to tell a story, but to be able to recognize that we can all share in the story behind what we own, right? We're all connected that way.
Yeah, we are. And what difficulties have you experienced in cheerleading an ethical stance and saying, look, this is the story I want to tell, and this is the way I'm going to do it. I'm not going to do it in a normal capitalist way, but I want to do it in this ethical capitalist way. I mean, what difficulties have you experienced in doing that?
So there's, I mean, that is an epic tome that we could talk about, but a couple key things that were challenges along the way was that keeping things fair along the way, because recognizing that it's not just about it's not about raging against the machine when you build an ethical product. It's not about it's about everybody involved in that process. And so I feel that that's helped keep a balance for me of holding the tension between honoring the customers and what they experience with us and everything from how they pay. I wanted to make it accessible to people. I was my ideal customer. And, at the time I was a single mom. I had very limited abilities to be able to do things. And I wanted to make it accessible. So that was a big part of it. So the equality thing for me is that it's really about everybody being equally participating in the process. So sometimes you come up against those values in different ways where it's like, well, for example, we work with our suppliers and our makers and they set the price. It's not about me grinding them down and getting them to, getting a cheaper price out of them. It's me saying, okay, if that's your price, then I need to now go back and make sure that I can actually present that as the pricing model that we want for our customers. Like it's an equal process. And it would be really easy when you're the one coming in that represents the one that's going to be providing the ability for that supplier to be able to make a living. It would be really easy to wield that power differently. And so I'm very cognizant of the fact that we not only do we need each other, but like if we create a business relationship where we're both equally valued, then we're going to continue to be able to build something good. So that's been one of the things. The other thing has been, it's one thing for people to say they do good things, and they may very well be doing it, but finding ways to help people understand what that looks like. So for us, that part of that is like the tire counter that you see at the top. We partner with an amazing company called Green Story to be able to do that. And just, thinking about, okay, holding yourself accountable and recognizing this is what we're doing good. This is what we're not yet really doing great, but we're moving towards it, and being authentic in how we're moving towards doing better.
So how do you do that? I mean, so one is an expectation from yourself in your company and the ethical stance the company takes. You're not quite there, but you're working towards that.
Yeah.
And the other is the expectation, or managing the expectations of all the stakeholders in your business, and of course your customers. So how do you deal with all the expectations of all the stakeholders around your business and the customer? How do you manage that? How do you deal with that? I mean, we find it very difficult, Sahoja. How do you deal with it?
Yeah, it is difficult. So one of the things for me is that my core staff in Dominican Republic, I really draw on their feedback. There's a high trust level. Like we've been like, so when my key person in Dominican, when she says this is not going to work, or I think you should do this better, I really put a lot of weight in her perspective, because she is the one that has the lived experience of that, and I don't want to become too disconnected from it. Another thing that has been a challenge for us has been, helping to bring our suppliers alongside of us and say, like, we need to measure this, or this has to be important. You can't, like, I need to know where you're getting this from, not because I don't trust you, but I want to be able to be accountable for how this is being sourced, and helping to educate myself on how to best educate them, if that makes any sense. Like, to learn how to communicate with them in a way, and connect with them in a way that respects our mutual interests together.
Got it. So it's almost trying to get them to share in your story.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Because they already are, they already are sharing the story, but like, to really help them understand even better, like we did a team thing, experience about well, before the pandemic, back in Dominican. And it was so fascinating hearing from the team that makes our soles up in the workshop, where they were like, ever since I've been working here, I started talking to my kids about what it means to recycle. And I about how can we respect the earth more, and just all these little things that I didn't realize were going to be the side benefits of doing this. Like, we tend to think about, like, okay, it's going to be about survival, and it's going to be about paying them fairly, but it's also about, like, all of us having at the core of who we are, we all have the same desires. We want to do well by those we care about, and we want to have meaning in what we're doing.
Yeah. And so and then how do you, and this is a really interesting question, at what point, we know that we're not perfect in our ethical stance. Mm-hmm. We're all trying to improve it. And how do you kind of manage your own expectation in terms of where you want to be and where you are in terms of your ethical stance?
So, referring first of all to the B Corp thing, that going through the B Corp process is, like, not for the faint of heart, first of all. But it's also it also helps you start to see things from a 360 of why you're doing what you're doing, and how because it's not about being perfect, it's about doing better and doing better, right? So that's been helpful. But the other thing has been thinking, okay, so what can we now do in this next step? So, for example, we started, we use upcycled leather in certain elements and so we said, okay, so we want to use this upcycled leather, and it comes from different sources, everything from like upcycled plain seats to like furniture offcuts to like dead stock and remnants. So creating things that can work within those constraints. And then, now we've started conversations with, it's pretty exciting, with an actual upcycled leather product that is from the offcuts of sports equipment. So that's exciting. So we're starting to look at, is this going to work for all of our designs, and what would how can we start to slowly transition over? Because, we're a small company. And so when you're at the helm of it, everything is so exciting, and reining in your ideas and being realistic with, like, how much can you take on at this time, is you have to be honest with yourself and be, it'd be nice to just be able to go, and now everything is like 100% across the board, but we're just, slowly, little by little, get it as we learn, and as we find ways to be able to incorporate it. We've just been doing our best.
Oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Why Sahoja crystal?
Well, I really appreciate and love Sahoja's philosophy around giving people, not just being a marketplace, but actually giving people an opportunity to share in the power of their purchasing. Right. So everything from your Sahoja dollars, is that what they're called? No.
Yeah, it's yes, our currency of kindness.
Currency of kindness, yes. So I love that. That to me is a super unique way to do it. Also, the fact that I find that you as a co-founder, and the idea behind it is people that have already been out in the marketplace, and they're starting from a different perspective. They're starting from the perspective of recognizing what enterprise and business can look like and how it can be transformed, that it doesn't just need to be transactional. It can actually be a transformational,
Yeah.
circular relationship that we can share in. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. You get it. You get it. That's what it's all about. It's called, I think you can call it community, actually. So community is so important now, you know,
Yeah.
especially in this day and age that we're living in. We all need to get together to deal with what's happening around us.
Yeah.
Yeah. What advice would you give to other organizations that want to, corporations or, you know, enterprises who want to start an ethical based company, or even transform their existing company to one where they start, you know, having an ethical footprint? I mean, what would you say to them? What advice would you give them?
That it sounds kind of cliche-ish, but it's really true. Done is better than perfect. And so Seth Godin, who is one of my favorite people that I like to listen to, he always says, he uses the term to just do it and ship it, meaning, not meaning you put like a slapdash product together, but that we could drive ourselves nuts and, you know, trying to perfect something rather than just trying. I mean, there's, you know, nobody gets points for not trying. Nobody gets points for having a good idea that never went anywhere, because ideas are a dime a dozen. Like so I can't remember who was at the Queen of Hearts, I think, in Alice in Wonderland, says she has, like, you know, 100 ideas before breakfast, or I'm totally quoting it wrong, but we're always going to get ideas. Ideas are going to visit you all the time, but it's what you're willing to do with that idea. You know, I just got to share this. When I had the idea for Brave Souls, I put a business model on my kitchen wall in my apartment, and I used Post-it notes, and it was on the wall for like 2 weeks, and I had different Post-it note colors, and I would move things around as I was thinking about it, and I looked at it and I distilled it down, and I came to the conclusion that I think I could launch it with $250, and that was actually because that was really all that I could afford. I'm just being totally honest. It was at a really difficult place in my life for so many reasons, but I was able to distill it down to how I could leverage things. And I think that is an amazing power that we have in the world of change, is when we think about, rather than thinking about what we don't have, think about what's within your hands to start to do. And that's how change happens. And change, that's actually the only way that change is going to really happen, is if we just look at it that way.
Well, it just a thought came to my mind. Please mind the pun, but I think there's an expression we have here, and which might be apt to Brave Souls, which goes, Crystal, you put your foot where your mouth is. You put things into action. Yeah. Yeah, that's you know, you just didn't speak. You kind of you walked the talk. That's what you did, and that's what Brave Souls is about. Brave Souls is about walking the talking. Well done, you. Thank you.
Thank you.
But no, it's a lovely story, you know, and thank you.
Well, thank you. What a great way to start. Well, kind of have my morning anyways. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for spreading kindness. Visit Sahoja Ethical Marketplace, where you can read Brave Souls' story, buy Brave Souls products, and at the same time, you know, be given some currency of kindness, which you can use in many ways. So thank you, everybody, for helping spread kindness, and thank you, Crystal, for helping to spread kindness. Thank you for this.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.